So, Kirsten, here we are in the Criterion Theatre, the beautiful Criterion Theatre.
It's stunning.
To talk about William Shakespeare's play Macbeth. And I suppose the first question that we should be asking ourselves is why, over 400 years after Shakespeare's death, why are we still talking about it, this play? Why are we still talking about him? Why is he still being performed so much around the world? And why is he on so many of the curriculums around the world?
I kind of ask this question to my students when I start teaching them Shakespeare. And, you know, the thing that kind of rings true and comes from that question, the answer is that his plays are about the human, ultimately about the human. And over 400 years, the human hasn't changed. Even though technology has changed and industry has changed and the way we live has changed.
Because all the plays are fundamentally, although they're about kings and queens and they are set all over the world, they're fundamentally about brothers and sisters and husbands and wives and best friends and people falling out and people falling in love and people...
And we like watching ourselves, don't we? We like to go and look at something that we can relate to and go, oh yeah, or I wouldn't do that, or yeah, that's just like me, or what's he going to do? And, you know, we get into that, don't we?
Live a coward in thine own esteem, letting I dare not wait upon I would, like the poor cat of the adage.
Prithee, peace! I dare do all that may become a man. Who dares do more is not.
What beast was then that made you break this enterprise to me?
I'll tell you what else is really good that he does, which makes it timeless and a director's dream, is the lack of stage directions. So if you think about Macbeth, the very first scene where the witches meet, all it says is a desolate place. That's all it says. I could ask my students in class, what is a desolate place? And they could come up with all sorts of ideas. So some, you know, a beach, some cliffs, out at sea, a forest. It could be anywhere, a corridor. And that lack of stage direction gives the director an opportunity to set it wherever he wants.
When shall we three meet again? In thunder, lightning, or in rain? When the hurly-burly's done, when the battle's lost and won.
So I think the sort of perfect storm of his writing is not only for whatever reason does it feel like he's talking, he can still speak to any generation about who they are and their lives and hopes, etc. He also does it in the most extraordinary way in terms of the language that he writes.
And I think back then, they knew, didn't they? They knew the difference between verse and prose. They knew that somebody that was speaking in verse was of a higher status than somebody speaking in prose. So really, I think sometimes the fear, you know, that young people have of Shakespeare is the language. But once they know that, then you've equipped them. So if you go into the theatre knowing the difference between verse and prose, knowing the difference between iambic pentameter and trochaic tetrameter with the supernatural, the way the witches and the fairies speak in Midsummer Night's Dream, the witches in Macbeth. If you've got that and you're equipped with that, then it's not so scary. Then it's broken down.
There to meet with Macbeth. Fair is foul and foul is fair. Hover through the fog and filthy air.
I think, speaking from an actor's perspective as well, if you're seeing theatre which is boring, if you're seeing if you're seeing a show where the language isn't comprehensible to you, I'm not sure that's Shakespeare's fault. I think it's down to actors and directors, and when you're making a piece of theatre like this, to find a way to make sure that language is accessible and find a way to make sure that story is accessible, and not just accessible, but exciting.
Absolutely.
Because these are exciting stories. I mean, Macbeth in particular, you know, it's full of intrigue and murder and, you know, goodies trying to get the baddies and the baddies trying to protect themselves with the goodies, to simplify it. It's an exciting, action-driven play.
They stared and were distracted. No man's life was to be trusted.
Oh, yet I do repent me of my fury, that I did kill them. Wherefore did you so? Who can be wise, amazed, temperate, loyal and furious in a moment? No man! The expedition of my violent love outrun the pause of reason. Here lay Duncan, his silver skin laced in his golden blood.
Thematically, it is fundamentally about power. Who has the right to power? What you do with power? How you get power? Then below that, it's about the decision-making about how this man goes about getting power.
How impressionable he is.
Yeah.
Because something is suggested to him, isn't it? It's not written in stone.
Yeah.
Something is suggested to him by the witches.
Yeah, which is
And how
this
is
the
he
one
gonna get that
you
power?
may be king.
Yeah. And also, it's about God saying, you are king.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens if you mess with that? What happens if you mess with God? Because people still believe in God today.
Yeah, that God
Yeah,
is
if
your
you-
right. You're right. The reason someone is a king or a queen is because God made them that.
Absolutely.
So what right do you have? Do you have the right to usurp,
To pull
kill?
the plug
Yeah.
on
that
and kill
leader.
a king.
Yeah,
Kill
and
a
then what
king,
happens
yeah.
to you if you do something which you can be damned
Bad.
for?
Yeah.
What are the consequences of making decisions like that?
Out. Out. Brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow. A poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more.
And I think as an audience member and as a student, it comes back to the humanity, doesn't it? It comes back to the, if I were in that situation, what would I do? And watching the demise of Macbeth and watching every decision he makes being a wrong decision.
I also think then we get into themes of what is a man, which becomes a sort of massive theme throughout it. He says, when he decides that he doesn't want to kill Duncan, he says, I'm a man. That's what a man would do. Lady Macbeth then says to him, if you kill him, then you're a man. And then later, when we have Macduff, when he hears the news of his children being killed and his wife being killed, Malcolm, I think, says to him, take it like a man. And he says, yeah, but I have to feel it like a man. So there's
What
a
is
whole
manhood?
sort of, what makes a man?
Yeah.
Which again, in our sense of timeless, what makes a man, what makes a human?